Hi everyone, welcome to Road Scholars. We're here in the service department. I don't want to dive deep into the history of the Carrera GT and how it came to fruition, but in a nutshell, as the FIA and the ACO circuits started changing their rules and regulations in the mid-90s, the GT1, the LMP1 cars, they start phasing out of racing. So Porsche decides that they're going to build a Le Mans prototype for the 99 race season, using a twin turbocharged six-cylinder. And then all of a sudden, Porsche remembers, oh, back in the day in the early 90s, 1992, we built this V10 5.5 liter monster motor, and let's use that, and let's just delay and we'll race in the 2000 season. But mid-99, Porsche then all of a sudden decides, wait a minute, we want to build an SUV. That's going to be a great idea, great production. Let's get into that market, and the Cayenne was born. Right, so Porsche pulled people out of motorsports, the designers and engineers, to focus on the Cayenne, right, in 1999. And then there's some speculation. Ferdinand Piëch, right, with all of his triumphs with Porsche in previous years, is now the chairman of Volkswagen Audi, right? And the speculation is that Ferdinand perhaps didn't want to have any competition for the Audi R8 in future race seasons. So with that said, Porsche still produces a prototype, right? A concept Carrera GT that debuts in 2000 at the Paris Auto Show. And during the auto show, Porsche got so many accolades. You know, there is so much interest in the concept car and the Carrera GT that Porsche decides, yes, let's put it into production. Not saving it for the racetrack, but let's build a production street-going, essentially supercar, road-going race car. Along with the proceeds, the revenue they were generating from the Cayenne. So what I want to focus on today is here, we have a basalt black Carrera GT 2005, right? Porsche decides they're going to, their aim was to make 1,500 cars. They end up building 1,270 in 5 colors, right? Faience yellow, Guards red, Seal gray, GT silver, and of course, as we see here, basalt black metallic. And of course, we also know the few paint to sample cars, many of you have probably seen over the years, leaked out as well. But what I want to focus on, I thought would be interesting for today, is to be able to share a little bit as you know, the basalt black car here is getting a full service. We're preparing it and servicing it for its new owner. And you know, it's fun to do a walk around and the car's all put together, wheels are on, the bumpers are on, and we do a quick walk around and talk Carrera GT. But what's kind of special is to have the car apart, and there's all the talk all the time about the big Carrera GT service, right? Which is a real thing. And let's just dive in a little bit. Yes, the Carrera GT Special, we'll get to that in a little bit, but let's look at a few components, kind of what really makes the Carrera GT such a special car. Real easily accessible here. Obviously the discs, right? And the composite ceramic calipers on here that we've become accustomed on later model 911s as an option, right? Here, 15 inches for the stopping power. You know, the front's 19-inch rims, the rear's 20-inch rims, and provides a lot of, you know, I mean, they look amazing, right, for one, and it's just a huge thing, and when the wheel arches open, it's just a beautiful thing to behold. And then we think about, let's think about and talk about a little bit of suspension, and I don't know, Trey, if you can see up in here, but the Carrera GT uses cantilever suspension, right, which traditionally, you know, our suspensions on our 911s we're accustomed to seeing is a vertical, you know, shock and maybe a coilover. But in a cantilever suspension, we essentially have a few components. Those of you who know race cars, do some racing yourself, right? The cantilever suspension provides a little bit more control and a little bit more comfort per se as the wheels are going to fitting the contours to the road. But if I can point out a couple things, right? We have this push rod right up here, and Trey, I know it's hard to get to and see here, but since we have the fender liners off, we got to try, right? Because it's so cool. You know, we got this push rod that runs all the way up here to essentially this rocker, right? That's just right up in here. And that rocker is attached to our coilover, right? Up there, that's mounted horizontally. So as my wheel is fitting the contours to the road, going up and down, hitting bumps, right? I don't want to push on this too hard. It's actuating our shock up there, kind of in the horizontal fashion, back and forth as the wheel's going up and down. So that's such a cool thing to see when you have it, like I said, the open wheel arches and no fender liners, is that special racing, essentially suspension that we typically see in race cars. So that's just very neat. People talk a lot about, you know, the Carrera GT service and what it all entail. You know, it depends on how many miles, what everybody's doing. This particular car, on a Carrera GT, when it's put together, it has all this air induction, right? When the front bumper's on, it's easily, you know, accessible, but you know, the radiators are accessible, right? These are complete. These are new radiators installed in the car earlier today, actually. And these are the 3 radiators that we took out of the car, which is interesting because if you get a close up here, Trey, on the big radiator, the center radiator, right? These are not cheap radiators, people. You know, the several thousands of dollars, right, where we see leaks occurred, right? Probably from a rock getting up into that air induction and hitting the radiator, especially on this one and also on one of the side radiators, right, where we see a leak probably occurred through here. So we had 2 leak radiators, but why are you going to replace 2 and not the 3rd? So we took the initiative for, you know, the owner just to do things the right way and replace all 3 radiators. So that's an expensive, as you can imagine, everything Carrera GT is relatively costful. So, you know, from there we look at that, you know, we see a lot of the, you know, the undercarriage bits, right, all the carbon fiber, you know, the undercarriage protective trays and all that to protect the undercarriage. And if we go back over here, Trey, let's look and see if we can get inside and look up into the cavity, right, the engine bay. And what's cool about this is that, you know, you can read all kinds of information on how the Carrera GT was built, and you can see the carbon fiber monocoque and subframe, right, and all its rigidity and kind of the structural support, you know, throughout in the engine bay when this monster of a motor is out of the car. And a couple other things that I find interesting, you know, to point out, a little thing, is you see a lot of the heat shields, right, and the heat shield wrap, you know, throughout the engine bay. And this little cable right here, that's your emergency brake cable. Protected on the rear with the heat shielding, right, because it's mounted up here behind the muffler. It has this, then all of a sudden, I don't know why they just didn't wrap it all, but it mounts up here, right, away from the heat, and then you get some more heat shield up here when it gets, so that, I mean, the detail that you find inside here is just so intriguing. I could look at this stuff for hours. What else is neat? Obviously, the axles are pulled up out of the way for right now. You can see here, too, maybe a little bit better, the cantilever suspension, right, with this push rod going up to the rocker, controlling, you know, that coilover, you know, as we discussed up front. So it's just so cool, you know, to see the firewall, to see how big the cavity is, to see everything that's going on, the engineering, the mechanicals, all the electrical stuff that's happening is just, I mean, you just don't get to see every day, so it's fun to look at. Moving on to the motor, the engine and transmission. Essentially, like I said, in 2000, for the Paris Auto Show, Porsche used a 5.5-liter V10. Well, that's not how we know it today. It evolved into a 5.7-liter engine, producing a little over 600 horsepower, 430-some foot-pounds of torque, right? And just an absolute naturally aspirated, street-going monster, in my opinion. And if you ever get a chance to drive one, don't pass it up. They're absolutely exhilarating. So what I want to point out, which is really cool, since we can do these things, I'm going to pull the cam cover off. most of you who know me know that I'm not a mechanic, but I get into this, look in here, and it's important. The motor's out of the car. From a service standpoint, we know we're going to do the clutch. We know we're going to do some other things, and we just got to do a full inspection on everything. So we open it up, look at these huge cams, obviously 2 on this bank. We have 2 more huge ones just like it on the other side. And the inspection turned out great. They're very healthy, no scratches. They're not marred. They're not, burnt in any fashion. And so, very happy to find that on this 8,000-mile Carrera GT. So I'll see if I can put this back here properly so the boys don't get mad at me. And let's see here. There we go. There we go. Not that graceful, but it's back on. Let's look into, this is such a cool thing. This is actually a mount, right? Designed specifically by Porsche. It is a Porsche part to be able to do this service. And it's so cool because as the motor is essentially married to the transmission, you unbolt it, et cetera, and then you can just basically slide this back to do the work. Our table is electronic, obviously hydraulic, up and down. It tilts, it shifts to be able to move up and down, but that's essentially how you're able to get this huge engine and transmission out of the car. Some other little notable things in here. Obviously, this comes off to do the rear main seal, right? And you think about service, you're going to do everything possible to ensure that, our clients, our friends are responsible for continued maintenance and preservation. So we do that. The clutch is not in here right now. All right, it marries up here. Let's look at this real quick, Trey, because it's super cool. It's over here on the table. New clutch that everybody talks about when they're perhaps buying, selling a Carrera GT. In my opinion, at some point, sometimes overly discussed. But here is the old, and here is the new clutch pack, right? Which is super intriguing to me because in a standard 911, like our new GT3, RSs, et cetera, they don't have 5 pressure plates, right? When you build one of these, let me see if I can do this properly. Of course, I laid this out, kind of beforehand to make sure that I can do this. Maybe I didn't do it very well. There's one, right? We throw this in, and we're building our clutch pack, which is, to me, it's kind of cool, right? We just build it up, right? And all of a sudden, right, we have this expensive, high dollar, $30,000+ part, right? Which is cool. And to note, the Carrera GT, the clutch itself, as we discuss them, we look at them, we measure them. This clutch doesn't need to be replaced, right? It actually measures within specifications, but it's getting close. So actually, we took the initiative. Let's go ahead and replace the clutch, make it fresh for the next owner. So, I mean, how cool is this, Trey? I mean, you think about, all the Carrera GTs we see at show, Carrera GTs that are going at auctions and different events that we go to, but we don't all every day get a chance to really dissect it, look at the particulars, some of the specifications that, have the engine and transmission out of the car, and really what makes the Carrera GT so special. In today's marketplace, I'll finish in talking a little bit about, the value of these cars, where, in this hypersensitive market that we live in right now, everything, not just automotive world, right? From, land to art to watches, and of course the auto industry, we have this little tick up and to the right, so to speak. And Carrera GTs have been, in my opinion, undervalued for many, many years, and also others in the industry, colleagues of ours, right, feel the same. And, 6 to 12 months ago, these cars, Carrera GTs, were selling for half the price as they are in today's market. Maybe finally getting the recognition they deserve, not only, yes, somewhat of a limited production car, 1,270 built for the world, Yes, they're very exhilarating to drive, you know, with all that power, you know, not easy to get off the line fast with the way the clutch is set up, right? You're kind of creeping out or you're spinning the tires. But at the end of the day, you know, yes, from a drivability standpoint, but you think about all the engineering that went into producing the Carrera GT and the evolution from the previous race cars and some of the components they used. You know, it's very special, and they did such a heck of a job. It's, you know, arguably one of the best things that Porsche has ever done as a car manufacturer, and it's just a really significant, important car as the last analog supercar. So hopefully that's a little bit insightful, kind of fun to look at these things. You know, being able to look at the cams, being able to look at the cantilever suspension, talking a little bit about the radiators, what goes into servicing a Carrera GT, and once you have the motor and transmission out, what else are you going to do to, you know, to ensure that when it goes back in, you've done everything that needs to be done. It's just a really treat to be able to share with you kind of all these details and components. So hope it's a little insightful. Look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks.